Well, welcome everyone who's joined us live on the webinar. This is Everyday Leader. I'm Colin Tapscott, and I've got with me Ashley. Welcome, Ashley. It's great to see you from Force Business Development, and you're joining us for our very first live webinar. So, yeah, Ashley, I wonder if you want to kind of introduce yourself and say a little bit about yourself.
Yes, thanks, Colin. Great to be here today, and I've been a contact of yours for a little while now, so I'm looking forward to having this conversation and exploring some of the experiences that I've had in the past. So I'm Managing Director of Force Business Development and work with businesses around East Anglia with their growth initiatives and strategy, social media and marketing.
Yeah, great. It's great for you to be part here of the webinar. For those who've joined us, I'm Colin Tapscott. I'm the Director of Everyday Leader. And Everyday Leader is about inspiring and equipping people so that they feel empowered. We particularly want to help you feel empowered with leadership and communication issues. And our topic of our webinar today is we're going to be looking at those kind of challenging conversations. And our topic is converting that challenging conversation into a confident collaboration. I do love a bit of alliteration, hence why we've got all those C's in there as well. Ashley, you and I have had a chat. This is one of the biggest topics that I find when I do one-to-one coaching with people, is a topic that comes up time and time again. People find it really difficult to have those more challenging conversations with people, just hold them to account. So yeah, I wonder if you've had any challenging conversations that we perhaps can anonymize, so we protect either the innocent or the guilty. Any particular ones you had that were difficult, and kind of what was it that was difficult about them? I know we're going to explore a specific one with you later, so we'll hold on to that one. But any challenging conversations you've had?
Yeah, quite a few. So I've been a manager and a senior manager for about 20 years. So there's been lots of different scenarios. In my early career, I felt quite, let's say, unequipped for those conversations. I hadn't had an awful lot of formal training. Thankfully, that's changed more recently over the last sort of 5 to 10 years, I'd say. But on reflection, there are times where I think I could have done with some extra support and coaching. And that's what I kind of like to look back on, what I've learned and how I would do things differently. So I won't go into too many more recent conversations because that only leaves a handful of people. But at the same time, those conversations do crop up in everyday life. So I'm really keen to talk about my experience later on.
Yeah. I've had a fair few in my time. I've had my previous life, I was a head teacher. So I had to have conversation with someone, a parent bringing a gun case onto a school site, which I'm sure you can imagine was, put a lot of fear into a lot of people. I've had to have conversations with members of staff, so some really delicate, tricky ones. For example, about someone that they didn't smell very nice, and that one was very personal. So that one was quite tricky. There's been ones about people's performance and them not performing well. Had conversations with people about their behavior and the way they were interacting with colleagues and sometimes interacting with pupils, as you say, my previous role as a head teacher. So yeah, they're quite tricky, and some of them can be around things that are really personal and things that you then think, oh, how are they going to respond to me afterwards? I don't know if we've got anybody watching us yet on the webinar, whether we've got any who want to suggest or pop into the chat kind of the types of things that maybe they find hard. Again, anonymizing enough to maybe protect anyone that might be looking at this later on. Have we got anybody there that wants to pop in the chat and say what's going on for them and what kinds of things they find difficult?
We've got a comment already.
I've just seen that one. Yeah, do you want to read that one out, Ashley? That one's a brilliant one.
It's not me, by the way, although I work with Hannah, but it's not me. So the comment is from Hannah. Thanks, Hannah, for joining. I've had a conversation with someone about the amount of chocolate wrappers thrown under their desk. So hygiene and tidiness comes to mind there, but it's not me.
Yeah, good. We may have some even more unusual ones if anyone else is. I don't think I've ever had a conversation with someone about chocolate wrappers. I'm not sure if it trumps my gun case one. I know a former head teacher colleague of mine had to have a conversation with someone about bringing a snake onto the school site. That was quite a difficult conversation. That probably is even more unique than my gun case. Just give a few more moments, see if anybody else on the webinar has any types of conversation that they find difficult. We'll give it a few more moments to see if anyone wants to pop anything up.
Of course, these scenarios can pop up anywhere, in the supermarket, in the car park. Challenging conversations aren't just limited to the workplace, obviously. So yeah.
And in a while, we're going to run through some key pieces of structure that might help people when they're trying to think of framing their conversation. We've got another one there come up, dealing with attitude, personality rather than quality of work. And those ones are always really difficult because this is about the person. And if we're addressing something with someone about a piece of their work, what that can lead to is the person feeling a little bit guilty. When we're talking to them about their personality and their attitude, it can lead, if we're not careful, to them feeling ashamed. And we don't want that in someone. We don't want to create shame. Adam's just raised a really good one: underperformance where they do not see the issue or they do not want to change. Yeah, and thanks for raising that one, Adam. That one, again, is often a key part at work. We need to address something about their performance, and it's helping them see the issue. Hopefully one of the steps that we go through, both in preparing and in also delivering, it'll be about talking about the impact of what you're seeing and being quite specific. So hopefully some of those things will help with that one as well. So just a few brief moments, see if anyone else wants to raise any, but those have given us a bit, two key aspects actually of the sorts of things that come up with people, particularly at work, which is either around their attitude and how they're behaving and their personality, or about performance. And again, we need some clarity in both of those, and particularly thinking about impact.
Yeah, performance is always one of those grey areas, isn't it? You have to kind of dissect very quickly. Is it something that's affected by outside influence? Is it something happening at home? Yeah, absolutely. And it's the approach we're going to talk about today, because generally a lot of the people I work with are really nice people, and most human beings are quite nice actually, and we don't want to offend or upset someone or make it worse or cause further problems, and that's often the bit that sits behind it. So the steps we take here are about working in collaboration with someone rather than working in opposition. It's about helping them feel a sense of control and contributing to this and taking ownership rather than us doing it to them. And so the advantage of that is that they then don't feel that they're being done to, and therefore it feels less traumatic, because we're still insisting on an element of them taking control and ownership of stuff. So thank you for those who've raised those questions. It might be worth us just thinking about some key steps, and I want us to explore in this webinar both our approach before the conversation and then some steps in the conversation. And I've got 4 R's that help us kind of think through the conversation before we have it. And it might be helpful actually for me to just share those 4 R's on screen now. So I'm just going to attempt to share those. There we go. So hopefully those will come up for us shortly. There we go. Yeah. So these are 4 R's. Before you have the conversation, actually, it's these first 3. It's getting yourself really clear on the reason for your conversation. So we might have a what, a topic, and in a moment, actually, we'll explore one with you, one that you've gone through. We'll know our what. So it might have been, for example, you brought a gun case. It might have been you put chocolate wrappers under the desk. That's the what. But what we want to be really clear on is our reason why. Why do we really need to talk to them about chocolate wrappers under the desk? Why do we really need to talk to them about the gun case? So it's getting really clear on that beforehand. Then to recognize the reason for your conversation underneath it. What's at risk if you don't have it, and getting that really clear in your head first, because that will give you a driver or an anchor to do it. Then it's thinking about the reactions, both your emotional reactions, but also their emotional reactions, and just preparing yourself for it. If you're feeling emotional reactions in yourself, just doing some things beforehand to lower your cortisol level, which is your emotional stress response, so that you can think more in your frontal lobe, where you can do some of that critical thinking with them. So just thinking about how they might react, how you might react, and how you kind of deal with that. And then raise the issue using 4 Ps. So
Yeah, that's the those are the 4 R's that we can perhaps run through now. So just stop sharing screen there. So Ashley, I wonder if we could take an example and work it through with you. So actually those who are watching can sort of see it's not necessarily a real live example, because we're going to perhaps look at what you've dealt with in the past. Yeah, so what's the one we could explore with you? You've got to have a kind of critical conversation with someone and confront them about something. So what's the kind of topic, so that our listeners kind of understand what it is?
The topic is going back to my first management role. I went in pretty unequipped really to have these type of conversations. I started at a business as a student, worked a couple of years, promoted through the ranks, if you like to say it that way, and then was a manager of quite a large supermarket. And that was at 18 years old. So there were a number of employees, there were a lot of different characters, but more specifically peers that I also socialized with and had started with at the same time. And the issue that I had, and the issues I was seeing, is that horseplay crept in. There were a lot of pranks played, messing about, and I felt that it was really kind of affecting my mind for quite a while. I don't think I had a conversation for about 2 months. And I was hoping that it would just resolve and they would get used to me being a manager and it would be looked after. But it was down to me, and really going into that conversation, I felt unequipped, and breaking it down now in hindsight would be really, really useful.
Yeah, and it's a really good example, because for many of us, we get promoted amongst our peers. So that's a really good example. How do you manage that? But it's also a sense of actually holding people to account around some behavior. So it's hopefully a thing that a lot of people who are watching will see and understand that. So the first R then is to just really realize the reason. So what you've said to me is that you've got to speak to a group who were your peers and you're now leading them. You're a young leader in that context as well. And there's some tomfoolery going on, some pranks, and it's not professional. So the what, let's first of all look at the what for you. What is it you're talking to them about, just so we get that clear?
To stop the horseplay and focus on the tasks.
Yeah. So the what is, look, there's horseplay, there's pranks, there's tomfoolery, and we need to get on and focus on our tasks. Yeah. So that's the what, but we want to get to the why. We want to get to the real reason that you're having this conversation, because the topic is the tomfoolery, but there's something more important that sits behind it. So what is it that's important about talking to them about stop mucking about? What's important about that?
Well, there were 3 things that always played on my mind. It was the example that they're setting to other people that work there that actually hadn't had any issues. They were good performers. Why should I keep working hard when they're messing about? And obviously the performance of the store and the damage that it could do to my career if an area manager or somebody walked in the door.
So at the moment, what we've got then is the reason why you want to have this is the example it sets others and performance. Yeah. So what is it about the example this is setting others and the performance of the organization that you were working for at the time? What's important about that? What's the impact you're hoping for?
It's a lot to do with image and success, really. You can't be a successful branch if you're not doing the bare minimum, which they weren't. And so success, it was just going to lead to failure if everyone kind of went down that road, and that would be me as a result on the chopping block, nobody else.
Yeah. So there's a sense there that what you want to come out of this is you want a greater success. And what's going to bring this success is not the tomfoolery. So what kind of behavior do you want them to be exhibiting?
Yeah. So I wanted them to understand that I was trying to talk to them to get them up to speed in terms of their performance, understand that this was negative, why it was negative, as you say. And I wanted to have the conversation, but couldn't get there to do it. I didn't know where to start with it. I didn't want them to see me as a kind of sudden dictator. And I was still seeing them outside of work. So that's where the main issues came. How do I play this? What tone do I use? And that really didn't set me up to have the conversation very well for a while. And then I was talking about the outcome. Okay, so you're going to lose your job. probably. I'll have to go through procedures I don't want to go into. I'll be on the block as well. This is just going to end bad for everybody through such a small and what seems to be fairly insignificant behaviour to them. It's massive in the wider picture.
So their behaviour that they were doing is going to have a real negative impact, but what you want is positive impact.
Yeah.
And so what I'm hearing is that their behaviour was unprofessional, and it's going to lead to a negative impact and a lack of success. But what you want from them is more professional behaviour, so that there is more success. Yeah. So what I'm hearing is the reason for this conversation, what you really want from them is professionalism, because it will result in success.
Yeah.
So the reason for your conversation, the purpose for this, is that you want them to understand that professionalism is what you're after, because professionalism will bring success for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So it's getting clear. So this is your example, but for those that are listening, it's thinking, first of all, what am I talking about? But what's really important here? What's a key thing I want them to understand? Get it down to 1 or 2 words. So for you, Ashley, we've got professionalism and success are key things that we want to come out of this. So you take that into the conversation that you're going to have. So just a quick check, if there's anyone watching, has anybody got anything they want to check about what we've just talked about in the chat? Is there any questions around that? We'll just give it a brief chance before we move on. So the key thing is just for you to really explore, what is it I'm talking about, but what is it about that that's important, and trying to just drill that down to 1 or 2 keywords that are really important. And in Ashley's case, that was about being professional to get success. For others, it might be actually what I really want them to understand here is safety. For in other conversations, it might be actually it's about quality we're after. For others, it might be I want to empower the person to understand the impact of what they're doing. Okay, we're not spotting any questions, so hopefully we're doing an amazing job of making that really clear. So the second part is just to recognize the issues. And it's thinking about, what do we risk if we don't have the conversation? The reason for us having this conversation needs to feel in us greater than our reason not. So you were holding off from having that conversation because you recognize, oh, it might affect my relationship with my peers. And so at this point, the reason not to have the conversation was feeling greater. So it's about getting the other side of the scales. What's my reason for this conversation? What's at risk if I don't have the conversation? It's interesting. I think you've already mentioned some of the risks. So just so we fill this bit in, what are the risks then, Ashley, if you don't have this conversation?
Yeah, if I don't have that conversation, then it's likely that I'll end up losing my own job. The performance of the store will suffer, and it'll be recognised, and it's I'm the neck on the block.
Yeah. So for you, there's a real personal reason. I might lose my job. You've also talked about for the business that actually our success is going to go down. It's also getting it really clear, perhaps for them, that if you don't continue, or if you don't have this conversation, they will continue with that behavior. That's going to affect their performance. It means they are going to continue to do the same things wrong. They put themselves at risk too. So now you've got 3 strong reasons. On the one side, you've got you're recognizing, I might upset them. They might not want to go for a drink with me in the pub anymore. However, on the other side of the scale is my job, their job, and the company's performance. Now the scale feels tilted more into the reason why you need to have that conversation. So it's just recognizing that. But it's also perhaps recognizing their situation. Is there anything as well that you might need to recognize about what's going on for them? Now, without disclosing too much personal information in this one, it's just saying, is there anything going on for them? Anything you need to be aware of as to why this behavior might be kind of happening? Any thoughts on that that's not too personal?
No, I can. There was one particular member of the team I thought was close to me, and there may have been a hint of jealousy. They hadn't got any real career path planned out at that time of their life, and I think that personally they had issues suddenly, welcoming me in with open arms into that role, where they felt perhaps they weren't going anywhere. So there was a bit of that, but also that recognizing that they hadn't had the conversation with me either. They hadn't been made aware that I felt so strongly about my career and that this was affecting it. They may have been completely oblivious to how it was making me feel because I hadn't told them.
Yeah. So it's just recognizing that before you go in, think, actually, I haven't told them. So they might not be aware. this reaction, and also just being aware, yeah, there may be a little bit of jealousy possibly coming in there, and it's just recognizing that in the people you're going to have that conversation with. So recognizing the reason. So for you, that was about professionalism and success, recognizing the issues that perhaps might well be there, but also what are holding you back, but also the importance. And then the third one is that reaction awareness, just thinking about your emotions. What am I feeling about this? And we get a clue just thinking about our body, first of all, before we're going in this conversation. What am I noticing about my heart rate? What am I noticing about my breathing? Am I feeling a bit flushed here? Am I feeling hot? Have I got tremblings at all? These are just body signals to tell us that actually we're feeling a little bit stressed about this conversation, because the physiology of this is we're releasing cortisol, which goes to key body parts like our heart and our lungs to tell us to get ready for a fight, flight, or freeze moment. So it's just, first of all, just looking at our reaction. What am I feeling in my body, and what emotion am I feeling? So this was clearly a story from a while ago, Ashley, so you may not remember, but do you remember in those moments, or even if you're recounting it now, do you recognize in your body how some of you were feeling?
Yeah.
Also what emotions you felt?
Yeah, I've got a dry mouth just talking about it. I do remember, yeah, very much the heart rate as they were called up to the office. Sounds so like play by play. Called up to the office. I'm waiting for them to arrive. My heart rate increased. The hands were shaking a little bit. Tried to relax, but again, I thought, this is the time now. Do you know what I mean? That's probably why my body was gearing up for it. I knew that this was the time, but I had to try and control that.
Yeah. So it's just recognize your own emotions. Steve Peters, who wrote the book Chimp Paradox, he said there are two things that can help with our emotion. And he says your emotional side is like your chimp, the emotional part of your brain. And he says the things that calm your chimp down, first of all, is to recognize your emotion. And then secondly, to remind yourself of a time when it's been okay. So we might think, oh, recognizing our emotion or other people's might make it feel worse, but it doesn't. It's just saying, yeah, I am feeling anxious. I am feeling worried. Now, clearly, you don't say that out loud to them. That's just about you recognizing it in yourself. And so just acknowledge that emotion. And if you can, just remind yourself of a time when you have dealt with conversations and that bit's been all right, or where you have got relationship with this person. But it's also just thinking of what emotions they might have, and just doing what I call Google Yellow Manning, which is like if you go on Google Maps and you drop the Google Yellow Man, you can walk the route and see what it's like. It's just thinking, yeah, when I raise this, what emotions do I think I'm likely to see from them? What do I know about them? Yeah. Are they likely to get cross or angry, or are they likely to be teary or upset? And just prepare yourself for that and how you might respond. And the key thing, again, from Steve Peters, he says, if you think you're going to get these reactions, or when you see these reactions, is just acknowledge them. And we'll come to that in a bit when we talk about the 4 key steps when you're actually having that conversation. Okay. So that leads us nicely on to raising the issue. Raise the issue with 4 Ps, which again, I'll just share with you and with everybody now on screen. I just have to do a little bit of jiggery pokery on my screen here to be able to see them. Yeah, here we go. So those were the 4 R's. When you raise the issue, we use the 4 P's. The first is to pacify. So you start the conversation by just helping them realize you're friend, not foe. Because often if you've asked someone to see you, they too are thinking, oh, what's going to go on here? I'm going to be told off, and they're prepared for a fight. So you help calm their chimp, their emotional center, straight away. And you just say something like, look, I'm here to help. I'd really like to help you. And if you spot any emotion in them, you can see they're agitated or they're nervous, then you acknowledge that. So look, I know perhaps coming to speak to me has made you feel a bit agitated or nervous. So the first thing is just to pacify as you start that conversation off. You may need to return to this pacify at different points in the conversation. If they continue to get agitated at points, then it's just to come back to that. Then it's to get really clear on that purpose. So in your case, Ashley, what can you remember what yours were again? What was your purpose for that conversation?
The purpose was to ensure that we were successful and to
professionalism, I think, wasn't it?
Professionalism, that's it. Yeah, something I'm good at.
Yeah. So what we would do at this point in the conversation is we just explain, I want to talk to you about professionalism and how we can be successful in the business. And you might then drop in some aspect of the topic. And what I want to talk to you specifically about that is when you and some of the other guys are, and then you explain some key elements of what it is. And then you partner with them. So to partner with them, what you need to do first is just to give them some specific facts about what's happening. Now, the idea here is to have 2 or 3 key things that you want to raise that you've seen that have gone on. You want to be specific, because if you just say, yeah, I just want to talk to you about mucking about, they go, well, I'm not mucking about. Oh, it's hardly ever. Oh, come on, chill, Ashley. It was only this. But if you're able to say, look, I want to talk to you because actually last Wednesday after 4 o'clock, when you did this and this was the impact of it. So we're specific about the factual of when it happened and what they did and what the impact was. And also on Thursday at this event, you did this and this was the impact of it. And then you say to them, so I want to work with you to see how we can improve this. So what is it that you could do to help improve this situation? And so you put them in charge now of doing something about this. Now, you may get some that go, oh, fair cop, you've just given me 2 things and you've caught me out. But most people will go, oh, yeah, but it doesn't happen that often. So you may need 2 or 3 others to go, yeah, I recognize that may have been one of those weeks. However, you also did it on this occasion, and this was the impact, and on this occasion, when this is the impact. So I'm noting that this is continuing. It's not a one-off. Now, you don't want to sound like a policeman's notebook, but you might need to have 1 or 2 there. And so you repeat that again, and you just say, so what is it you think you could do to improve this situation? And so the ownership is on them and the control is on them. Now, they may still choose to argue the point, and you may then need to go back to the purpose, or you may need to go back to pacify. If they get upset, you might need to recognize that emotion. I can see you're getting upset, and I'd really like to help you because I want to make this better and stronger for you and for others that are working. So if you remember, what I want to help you to do is understand how professionalism can improve our success, both as individuals and as an organization. And then you bring them back. So what is it you think you can do? Now, they may well then start to engage. If they don't, if they storm out the room, you may well have to invite them back at another time, not straight away. They're now operating in their amygdala, they're in their emotional center in their brain. They're not in their frontal lobe. They're not able to engage. So they need time to calm down, and you pick it up later. But hopefully some now will start to engage and suggest some of the things they could try. You say, that sounds great. Is there anything else you think you could do? And they come up with some other answers. You can then, if you feel they're engaging in this and they're giving some really good ideas of what they could do to improve it, is then come back and say, well, how can I help you in this situation? Is there anything you need from me? And it might be about some training or some skills or support or mentoring that they might need. And then the last P, you plan together. You work together on what it is they're going to do and what it is you're going to do. And then you finalize the end of your conversation by saying, well, this has been really helpful conversation. Thank you for engaging in it. So if I've understood what we've discussed correctly, you are going to do X and Y and Z, and you're going to do that by these dates. And I'm going to do this and this by this date. And they then confirm that's what you've agreed. And then you agree a time to meet again in 2, 3, 4 weeks time, depending how long you need to allow them to put into place these things, so that they know they're also going to be held to account, and you've set a date and a time when you'll review this particular aspect. So those are the kind of 4 Ps that help you with that. To stop sharing. Yeah, so how helpful is that, Ashley? And where our time is kind of flying by, does that give you a good structure?
Yeah.
That conversation?
It really does. And it's only now, looking back on the last 10 or 15 years, that I can see where I've had this kind of support to find this path to do it that way, albeit not as well presented and articulated as you have. And certain courses in leadership help, but they don't give you the kind of emotional responses and how to react to that. So yeah, really good. I've just noticed another comment in the chat there we might be able to cover quickly before we go, actually.
Yeah, great.
So from Hannah, how do you know what the right balance of time to wait to start the conversation after an event? Immediate could be highly emotional, or wait too long and it snowballs. So yeah, quite an interesting one. A balance.
I think that's a really good question, Hannah. I've just mentioned about where is someone in their brain. So our brain has different parts, and our frontal lobe is where we do that logical human reasoning. Our amygdala, our emotional center, is when we're agitated, on edge. So actually, immediately after something, it depends where you're noting they are at, but it also, of course, depends what they've done. So actually, if there's something that's really quite public and completely inappropriate, they need to be held, and they and others need to know that there is going to be an accountability conversation around that. But it doesn't mean you have to have that full conversation there and then. I certainly know when I've been in those kind of moments, I've just said, okay, I recognize that there's something on here that isn't quite right. We perhaps all need some time to calm. And then what I'd like to do, so if it was Hannah that had done it, I'll just mention Hannah's name because she's raised it. I'd say, Hannah, let's just take some time to calm. And then I'd like to meet you. Perhaps we could meet at 4 o'clock today just to talk about what just happened. And that allows some time to calm, to bring that back in. And then she and everybody else knows that that's the case. I think that question around it snowballing, if you see a repeat pattern in behavior, which is what you were describing with your one as well, Ashley, is that, as you described it, that was left too long because you weren't clear on the reason why you needed to have that conversation. The reasons why you didn't want to have the conversation was greater for you. So in answer to Hannah's question, there isn't necessarily a set time because different people take long to calm in their amygdala. So it's about you knowing your colleagues as well. Generally, if it is very emotionally charged, you probably need to give it an hour or two because they won't be able to function in holding that adult constructive conversation with you. So hopefully that's helpful to Hannah as well in answer to that one. Good. So actually, we've covered those 4 P's in the way you raise it. I hope that's been helpful to those who've followed us. If anybody else has got any more questions, raise those now just before we draw it to a close. And whilst we're waiting to see if there's any of those coming in, I think it's worth saying that next week our podcast comes out. So our Leadership Lounge podcast on Everyday Leader, it's on all podcast providers. Look out for an orange sofa if you're trying to find us on your podcast provider. Next week's one is on this same conversation. I'm meeting with a lady called Anna Hennell-James, who is a CEO, and we discuss this topic and go through these concepts a little bit further. It's about an hour-long podcast, and you can also find that on YouTube. So that comes out next Friday if anybody's interested in listening into that. But equally, if any of you want further coaching or support around difficult conversations, that's a key part of what we do at Everyday Leader. So please get in contact. So I'm not sure don't think there's any more questions, are there, on the list? No. Great. So just to pull it all together for those who've been listening, when you are about to or think you need to have this kind of conversation, just give yourself at least 10 minutes of thinking through what's your core reason why you want to have this conversation, what's the impact you're hoping to have, and drill that down to a keyword that you can anchor onto, whether like in your case that's professionalism, whether that's in other cases like to empower or take ownership. Recognize the issues that might well be going on for you. What's the risk for you, but also the risk if you don't have the conversation. That gives you energy to have the conversation and helps you realize it's not just that I'm being an ogre. I'm not just doing this to upset. There's a really important reason why I'm doing this. Being aware of your emotional reactions and theirs. So thinking about that reaction awareness, and then raise it using the 4 Ps. Pacify them at the start of the conversation. So you're not there as a threat. You're here to partner with them. Be really clear on the purpose why. And then partner with them, be specific about the facts and talk about the impact. Because even if they go, and if we go back to the question that we had earlier from Adam, where they don't recognize it, if they think, well, that's fine, that's just me. But if they start to hear, look, the impact you're having on the colleagues is this, and actually that isn't okay. So that key bit around the impact, and then saying, so what is it you think you can do? And if, like in Adam's one where he's raised there, where they just go, well, do I need to change? The answer is, well, yes, you do need to change, because unless you change, this is going to continue to be the impact on your colleagues, and this is how your colleagues will feel about you. And also this could lead then further for you going into disciplinary, which is not something I don't think you particularly want. So we don't want to use the stick, but it is helping them understand if they continue to behave in this way, this is and make these choices, then this is the consequence that will happen from their choices. So it's helping them see the impact, which might well help with the type of person that Adam raised. But I think when you really partner with someone, it can really make that difference because they hold on to the ownership. If you're not doing it to them, you're doing it with them. And then plan, work together on that solution and confirm who's doing what by when. So I hope that's helpful to everyone. And thank you for joining us on our very first webinar.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks very much, Colin.
Yeah, great. Thank you everyone for joining. And I believe this will be on LinkedIn later on as well, as it saves a video for anyone else who's watching.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Ashley.